Today we are going to be reviewing the Black Diamond Alpine Carbon Cork trekking pole. I got these a couple years ago and I've used them successfully for several seasons now. Actually, I think I've had them for 4 or 5 seasons, and I've done about a dozen different mountain hunts with them. There's a lot of different trekking poles out there today, everything under the sun you could think of or dream of, but I've found that I've really come to like these ones, and I'll go through a few of the features that I really like. So the one thing I really enjoyed with these is the wrist straps. They don't come loose, they keep your hand in there, they work really well. I've never had an issue with them. When they get wet, they dry out incredibly fast. Cork handle, incredibly comfortable. They've got like a rubberized kind of deal down here if you want to hold it more like a, just kind of more like a stick, I guess, versus having this contoured cork handle. But the one thing I do really like with this cork handle as well, when it's extremely cold out and below zero, when you're holding this with a thinner glove, your hand doesn't get cold. Some of the cheaper trekking poles will have like a plastic type grip, and that plastic will be ice cold. When you grab onto it, it chills your hand, but these are pretty good. They don't freeze your hand on you. The other thing that's really great with this Black Diamond pole in particular are the locking hubs here. Now, this might not seem like a big deal to have a clamp like that, but compared to a twist lock, the twist lock, those tend not to last as long, and also the twist lock, when you put a ton of pressure on them, sometimes they'll fail and slide up, and then your pole's essentially wrecked. And I've had a lot of twist locks fail. They're usually cheaper than the clamp style like here. But on these, if there's ever an issue, all you do is you tighten the clamp here and push it back, and it's basically, you're good to go and you're fixed. Whereas the twist lock style, if that mechanism ever goes or breaks on you or fails, your whole pole's basically wrecked. Now, the one thing with this pole specifically, there's two clamps, two sizes. What I do on this guy, it actually has the numbering on it, so it says how long your pole is. So I kind of know what I like to have my poles preset at, and you just adjust it to the measurement on there. And on this guy, you set them both to, say you want 105 centimeters to that. You clamp it, and it's the same length every time. Both poles are the same. You don't have to hold them up and measure them side by side. It's quick, it's easy, and this is carbon fiber, and it is incredibly light compared to a lot of trekking poles. One guide I had in Alaska actually commented on how shocked he was at how well these poles held up, because a lot of his clients would come up with cheaper poles, and they'd have their pole break during the trip, or it would fail at the clamps, whether it's the twist lock or this style, I'm not sure, but he was incredibly impressed at how well these held up, because those guys typically use a nice axe as a walking stick up there. So kind of made me feel good that he thought they were good as well. The other thing I really like to have on my trekking poles is these rubber tips. Now, you don't have to buy the Black Diamond version, you can get an aftermarket one, but basically when you're hiking through the mountains, when you're up above tree line, these poles have like a little metal tip on them, and it's constantly going tick, 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 tick on the rocks. So you want to have these keep you a lot more quiet, plus your poles don't sink in to the mud. Sometimes when you're hiking, if it's soft or muddy soil and you don't have these tips on, that narrow point drives the pole pretty deep into the ground, and it can just be like a drag to keep pulling it out steady, even on the main trails. I actually prefer these rubber tips all the time. I never take them off. One thing I found made it walking way easier. if you were going across a glacier ice like they have up in Alaska in some places, sheep hunting, you might want to take them off just so you can dig into the ice. But generally speaking, if you're just if it's dry out, or there's not a lot of ice that you're crossing, these rubber tips are definitely the way to go. But overall, I'd give this brand of pole a 5 out of 5. It's been great. Never had a minute's issue with them. And if you don't have a set of trekking poles, you definitely need to get a set if you're backpack hunting. It'll make your life way easier, balances your load, helps balance your load when you're walking, especially if it's on a incline or up and down hills or side hilling. Just makes it so much easier. And whatever you do, just buy a good quality brand. Don't buy a cheap brand just because of the price. Spend the money, get a good pair, and go from there.